Bienvenidos a la sexta conferencia líder en la industria de gestión de servicios y Service Desk en Latinoamérica, SDI 23 MX. BP Gurús y The Service Desk Institute reúnen a los líderes y a las marcas más importantes de la industria a través de webinars, demostraciones y conferencias magistrales. Presentado por SDI 23 MX, transformando la industria de TI. Katrina Macdermid, empresaria reconocida a nivel mundial, autora galardonada y la principal experta en gestión de servicios de TI. Su libro, Humanising IT, la coloca como una pionera en aplicar principios de diseño centrados en el ser humano en la gestión de servicios de TI. Es una maestra de ITIL y autora colaboradora de todas las publicaciones oficiales de ITIL 4. Su experiencia, innovación y pasión por los servicios de TI centrados en el ser humano la colocan como una verdadera líder de opinión que está revolucionando el futuro de la gestión de servicios de TI.
So you can find your contacts.
Yes.
But you don't know how to add somebody.
Yeah.
Do you know how to send a text message to somebody?
Is that like an email?
Yeah. So if you want to text one of your children to say you're running late.
Oh, I see. Let me see. If I look up, yes, I've got an email address. So if I press that, I can now type in what I want to send. But do you have to always put a subject?
No.
No. So you can move that. Do you have to move that cursor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how to move the cursor, you see.
And so I would say that is, as I said, I really appreciate you doing this, Hilary, because
No, that's fine.
Watching you, and it is with all due respect, because you are very, there's nothing wrong with your mind, your memory or anything. You're a very smart, active lady, and a simple thing, and again, due respectfully, as sending a message to your children, you can't do. Essentially, you find it with some difficulty.
Oh, I've moved the cursor.
Yay!
And I think it would have been quicker to ring him up.
So again, hi everybody, and thank you so much. As the intro said, my name is Katrina Macdermid, and I'm the creator of a concept on a body of knowledge and a few other things called Humanising IT, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Just briefly, my company is called HIT Global, and we're here to change how we do IT service management. And the co-founder and non-executive director of HIT Global is Mark Basham. Some of you might know him. Mark was the actual ex-chief executive of Axelos, and we've joined a partnership to create a company called HIT Global. Briefly about me. So my name's Kat, Katrina or Kat, you can call me either. I'm an ITIL master. I'm not sure if in the old scheme of the ITIL, how the certification schemes, and that's, I like to say in those days, there was only 3 in Australia and about 40 globally. I know that's different with the new scheme. I'm also an ITIL 4 contributing author. So if you ever see the ITIL 4 books, I'm actually in the back. And I'm also, and I'll grab it, I've written a book called The Human-Centered Design for IT Service Management. I'm very proud that that's been published. It's been almost a year now. I can't believe how the time has flown. And we've also created a training course called Humanising IT. And during this presentation, I'll be just sharing some insights and some of my views about IT service management. Some of them might be a little controversial. Some of them you might not agree with me, and I would welcome and appreciate any thoughts that you have about my views of IT service management. I like to say that I've been around a long time. I've been in this industry for many, many years, so I've seen a lot of not so much success and some success. So as I said, that's what I'll be sharing today. So here's the agenda. I won't go through much detail, but basically we're going to start off with just some definitions, because what I find is sometimes it's unclear of even IT professionals expressing what IT service management is and some other key terms. The why and what of humanising IT. And unknown similarities between human-centered design and service management, and some of the problems today and tools and techniques. So that's basically the road that we'll be traveling on during this session. So what is human-centered design? I'm not sure if you know or if it's used a lot in your region. I know, Ariana, you're very passionate about it. But what I find is a lot of IT professionals don't know what human-centered design is. And so I'm just going to spend a moment explaining what human-centered design is, because it's essentially the basics of this session. So human-centered design ensures that services are tailored to the people who will actually use them. So a key word there, ensures that services are tailored. And that's what we'll talk about in a moment a bit more. And human-centered design is a creative approach to problem solving. And in many ways, I think that IT service management is a problem-solving technique also. But you'll notice a key word, it's creative. It's a creative approach to solving a problem. And what we find when we do humanising IT training, a lot of people in IT say straight away, but I'm not creative. And what human-centered design advocates is that everybody is creative. So whether we work in IT or in HR or in any type of industry or sector, human-centered design says we are all creative. And I think, in my view, that most IT frameworks don't allow us to be creative. In fact, they discourage us to be creative. And by that, I mean that we really have been educated for decades to follow best practice. And following best practice is not being creative. I will talk about more on the human-centered design. It focuses on the people using the service. It is an iterative process, and it has a goal to make the product intuitively usable. And some of those things, again, as I will say, I might be a bit controversial. I don't believe that we inherently do these sort of things in IT service management frameworks. Now, companies we are familiar with, and even ones we're not, use human-centered design. So Apple, Microsoft, airlines, LinkedIn, Starbucks, and companies, as I said, that not even the big companies, but most mid-sized to large-sized companies will use human-centered design to understand their customers and then design experiences or products and services for them. And again, I don't think that we spend a lot of time understanding our users. but big companies do, all companies do understand their customers. So, for example, how a customer interacts with your service or product. We spend a lot of time understanding the customers. What are they doing? Who are they? What are their skills? And human-centered design was not part of IT service management. Even though we are in the business of service, we are called IT service management. We just go back for a second, sorry. IT service management frameworks don't think about the different types of users, their technology skills, where they are, if they're outdoors, can they, for example, log a ticket? If they're frontline staff, they might not be in the situation. And again, companies will use design thinking to understand customers and then design their products and services. So what is human-centered design? What is IT service management? Again, as I said at the beginning, this is something that I find a lot of IT professionals, it's hard to articulate what IT service management actually is. I won't read that word for word, but basically how we describe IT service management, it's a systematic approach to managing IT services using best practice and continual improvement. It refers to activities associated with designing and creating, delivering, supporting and improving services. It encompasses various activities and benefits of IT, reduce costs and improve customer satisfaction. So what is humanizing IT? So humanizing IT integrates human-centered design into IT service management. And Humanising IT, as I mentioned earlier, it's a book. It's an online training course also, which I'll discuss later. But at its core, Humanising IT puts the human needs, capabilities, and behaviours at the forefront of IT service management. And again, I like to use an example of typically in IT service management frameworks, we have a process, and the process starts, for example, when the user logs a ticket or when the user requests something, and then the process starts. IT service management in that whole process does not think about what the user is doing before, during, and after. Okay, it really starts with what we do. So the user logs a ticket, we categorize it, we prioritize it, we will escalate it. We're not thinking about what the user does. And so what Humanising IT does, it takes tools and techniques of design thinking and integrates them into our processes in IT service management. So the process and service are intuitive, empathetic, and human-centric rather than solely functional. Again, I'm speaking from my experience in Australia and many other countries. I'm fortunate to travel the world and do consulting. And it's not very often that I hear people in the business saying, this is so easy to use and IT is fantastic. Again, it might sound I'm being a little harsh, but I'm speaking from my experience that many services that we build in IT are not intuitive, but they're functional. And interesting, both human-centered design and IT service management understand business outcomes and design services that fulfill them. So in IT service management, we go out and understand what the business wants, and we create the services and processes to support them. And essentially, that's what design thinking does as well. They both understand the need and create solutions. Sorry, and both follow, excuse me for a second, sorry. Excuse me, my earpod dropped. And both followed a structured approach to the design of products and services, but approach them in different ways. You might be familiar with, or I'm sure most of you are, with the IT service management lifecycle. And that's our structure in IT service management. We start with strategy, design, and operations and transition. And most IT organizations were and continue to be structured in this way. And that's how we design our services. And human-centered design also has a structured approach. And I like to say that quite often you might see a lot of the agile teams or digital teams, and they've got post-it notes everywhere, and they're working in teams. But what they're actually doing, again, like us, they're following an approach. And that approach is called the double diamond. So I'll just spend a moment on that. And the double diamond obviously comprises of 2 diamonds. And the first diamond is where we do research and understand the problem space. And then diamond 2 is when we have a clear understanding of the problem, a clear understanding of our users' needs, a clear understanding of what our users' capabilities are, their technology skills, and what the actual problem is. Then we go into solution mode, and that's diamond 2. And I find in my research, a lot of IT departments and IT teams and IT projects tend to jump into diamond 2 without really spending a lot of space in diamond 1. Again, understanding our users, empathizing with them, and actually challenging best practice. And that's what I said at the beginning. We're not really encouraged in IT service management to be creative. We are geared towards following a best practice framework and following those processes. And Humanising IT actually challenges that. We say, throw away assumptions, throw away what we think we know, and start at diamond 1, where we start again to understand the real problem that needs to be solved. So the double diamond is a graphical representation of the design and innovation process that is at the heart of human-centered design. So much like the service management framework that we are familiar with. So as I said, diamond 1 involves researching and understanding the problem space and user needs. It's about gathering insights, empathizing with users, and defining the design challenge. The second diamond, designers combine the insights to clearly define the problem to be addressed. And it's about framing the challenge, setting goals, and creating a clear design brief to guide the design process. And I really can't emphasize enough the difference that you will get of using design thinking within IT service management. Design thinking has been used to create the most amazing products that are out there, and experiences as well. And as I said, I'm passionate about bringing that into IT. So Humanising IT is a take on human-centered design and IT service management. So IT service management champions its customer focus, but doesn't tell us how. And what I mean by that in Humanising IT is that we're quite often told that we need to be customer focused, but it doesn't tell us how. Again, if you want to challenge me, I'd welcome it. But I've not really seen any IT service management framework that actually tells us intrinsically how to be customer focused. Whereas human-centered design shows us how to be customer focused, but again, in my opinion, doesn't understand the technology complexity of supporting an experience. And what I mean by that, quite often I work with agile or digital teams, and they create these experiences, but then they don't understand the IT service management component behind it. So sometimes that's why we have a rift or some arguments with digital teams and IT operations, because again, we're not really talking to each other. And Humanising IT brings the two together so that designers understand IT service management, so they understand what service levels are, how the experience is going to be maintained and supported and retired, all the things that IT service management is really great at. So why did I create Humanising IT? Well, there's a few reasons, but I do believe, as I've sort of been alluding to, that IT service management is no longer fit for purpose of how we knew it. So it's an aging framework, is IT service management. It's been around for decades, and that picture is just a little bit of fun to show you that it's probably one of my colleagues in the days. So IT service management was designed to ensure a uniform approach to managing infrastructure. And processes were systemic, documented, repeatable, and known. And systems were designed so they could be applied consistently across different organizations and environments. And it was really good at that. That's what IT service management was great at. But what it didn't do, again, was think about the experience of users and also IT professionals. And I just want to make it very clear that IT service management did fulfill its purpose, in that we had to manage technology, we had to standardize it, we had to speak a common language, and it was great at doing that. But what's happened, I believe, is that there's the problems that we continually, decades on, still see. CMDB, I'm not sure in your region if your companies have a fully functional CMDB. I've rarely seen a functional CMDB. Knowledge management, I see knowledge articles that are written in a technology format that I can't even understand. Problem management. Again, I very rarely see this done very well. We're good at managing problems, but we're not very good at managing solutions. And this is where the double diamond could come in, because the double diamond is where we use a creative approach to problem solving. And tooling issues, which I'll show you later, where we create interfaces that are so hard to understand and use. And this is what I mean, that service management didn't teach us these techniques. And it results in users are dissatisfied and frustrated with IT. And I like to say that I did mention I was an ITIL master, and there's a reason for that, because I had to study lots and lots of books in those days to become an ITIL master. It took me a long time, as I said, a lot of study, a lot of research. But in all those books, there was not one picture of a human. And that was a real moment for me when I realized, when I was studying, it's like, why we do things not great, as I said, in IT, that we create knowledge articles that are hard to understand. We don't understand what our users are going through. We don't design for experience. We really design to create a stable environment. And so what Humanising IT does is, don't create a process first. Let's start with understanding the user, understand the human experience, understand what the users, go to that first diamond, and then go to the second diamond, and then we can create our processes. So I want to give you some examples, and unfortunately not a good one. So I was saying about the UX, user experience, or UI, that I see on many portals that we present to our users in the business. Now, I'm looking at this as a service catalog, and if I'm a user, my application has frozen. I don't know if if it's a network issue. I don't know, is it a systems issue? I wouldn't know that. And this is, I won't mention the company, but this is a company that I've seen. This is what it looks like. And there's many, as I said, that look like this. So this is an example of where IT professionals, we are tasked with these type of activities of creating experience for our users, but we don't have the skills. And Humanising IT teaches us those skills. And I'm going to show you another example, and again, not a great one. Some of you might know this story, but it's when I was doing my ITIL Masters, I was doing design thinking. And design thinking, as I said, we go out and we talk to our users and we go and walk in their shoes. And I might just interrupt there, because quite often IT professionals will say to me, but Kat, we do ask our users what they want. Now, a key principle in human-centered design is you don't ask what users want, because quite often they don't know what they want. They don't know the latest technology that's out there. Or you have personas, people like who I call Bob. He's just happy doing his job. He's not going to cause trouble. So design thinking teaches us to go and empathize with Bob, go and watch how he uses our technology that we give him. And so this is an example of, as I said, I went out and visited Bob, and he's a baggage handler at the airline. And he had, it's marked there, a bag that in Australia we call them glad bags, but it's where you put your sandwiches in to keep them fresh. And he had a bag of those. And I said, why have you got? Just curious. I was looking around his desk. And he said, Kat, IT gave me the iPad. And he loved his iPad, but he said it rains a lot in Sydney. So the glad bag was to cover his iPad. And this is a perfect example how IT didn't go out and understand Bob's environment, that he needed a cover for his iPad. We just threw tech at him and said, here you go. And another example, I asked Bob how he liked the application, and he said it's great. He was really happy with it, but he was having problems entering and seeing things, and he didn't know that you could zoom in. So again, just observing people using our technology can give us some really great insights. And Humanising IT teaches IT professionals these tools and techniques. So let's look at some problem statements that I quite often see. Our incident volumes are increasing, and we need to review our incident management process. So just to jump ahead, what I'm doing is showing you problem statements that I have. We go and solve the wrong problem. And so this is an example. I was employed as a consultant because incidents were too high. So the assumption was the incident management process was broken. It wasn't. The incident management process wasn't broken. That wasn't the problem. Let's look at another problem statement. We need to encourage users to log a ticket via the portal by sending out more comps. So again, we're assuming the problem is that we've got to send out more comps. That's not the problem. Changes are the causes of incidents. That might be a problem. That might be true. Maybe. But if I go back to the other two, there's a prime example of where we assume what the problem is and we jump into that second diamond, the solution mode, rather than spending time in the first diamond and really researching and understanding why are the incidents increasing? Why? As I said, it's usually not because it's a process that's wrong. Let's look at a typical incident management process. So typically, as an IT professional, and I've done that, I've been employed in years gone by to write an incident management process. I get up the Word, Microsoft Word, and I'll start to write the process. I think this would be familiar to you. Then I would go to Visio in my days, or it's called Mind Map or something else now, and I would then map it. Again, I think we'd be familiar with this type of how we write and document the process. But what about what the user is doing? And I mentioned this earlier. In the whole process of incident management or service request management, what is the user doing? That process that I just wrote as a consultant was talking about, as I said, what I was doing, what IT was doing. And what I'm going to share with you is a technique called Moments That Matter. And it's a technique that I want IT professionals to start introducing when they look at doing the IT service management processes. So moments that matter, document it from the user's or customer's point of view. And here's an example of someone going to a hospital. And I think we can relate this to someone has an incident. So arrive at the park and pay for the taxi, enter the hospital, find the emergency room, see the triage nurse, fill out the insurance forms, wait and wait some more, get ushered into a treatment room. So put on an uncomfortable gown. So we're humanizing the experience of someone going into a hospital. And if we put that same type of technique into when a user logs an incident, what we would document is very different to that Word document. So it could be the user is working, trying to help people at an airport. The user notices that the system stops working. The user contacts the service desk. The user has to wait 20 minutes on a phone call. The user is frustrated at the prompts that they don't understand on the IVR, on the telephone system. The user gets more frustrated. So I'm documenting an incident from the user's point of view, not from my point of view. And when we do that, we start introducing further tools of human-centered design called empathy, personas, journey mapping, prototyping, moments that matter, and empathy mapping. So I'll just stop there for a moment and recap on the key things that we've covered so far that I think are the most important from our time together is the problem space. I'll just go back to that. These problems are, as I said, very common to what I see, that people, we jumped into what we think is the problem. And in this example, as I said earlier, I was engaged to fix the process. And when we spent time in Diamond 1, we realized that the problem was a few things. Incidents were being logged as incidents that were not incidents. Users were bypassing the process. So the numbers that we were getting weren't really indicative of what was happening. But primarily the problem space was that tickets were being logged as incidents that were not incidents. And that was the problem. So by knowing that, so that was deep research. We looked at tickets, we analyzed them, we spoke to users, all that at research. We then have a new problem to solve, and it was the right problem to solve. Again, with this, it's got nothing to do with sending out more comms to users. Why are users not logging a ticket via the portal? Probably, and usually it's because of a poor experience. So sending out more comms is not going to solve the problem. Another key thing that we learned that I would like you to take away with is this: the moments that matter. Thinking about what the user is doing. Go on them on their journey, feel their pain. Then let's go and write the process. So use that technique, moments that matter. Document what they're doing, not what we're doing. So let's look at some of those techniques. Empathy is a key principle of human-centered design. And it's what really it is all about. And again, I might be a little controversial. I don't think empathy was a key term that we learned in traditional frameworks. It was not really mentioned. It was just a user. We might have talked about a VIP, very important person who was usually the senior management, might have had a different experience, but that was about all. That's all we mentioned. There's no empathizing. And I'm not sure if you've heard of this term. And I've been guilty of that, where it's a picnic issue, a problem in chair, not in computer. And in my day, I used to say, and I'll put my hand up, I was a bit like that. The users are stupid. This is easy to use. I didn't really empathize with the users and perhaps think, maybe this is not easy to use. So empathy refers to the ability of designers to deeply understand and share the feelings, needs, and perspectives of users that we're designing for. It involves stepping into the user's shoes, seeing the world from their point of view, and using this understanding to inform and improve the design process. Persona, I mentioned personas briefly earlier, but a persona is a fictional representation of a target customer. It includes demographic information, behavior, goals, needs, etc. So Bob was a perfect example of a persona that we would create under Humanising IT. And this is another example of a persona. We call her Carmen. And Carmen represents somebody that is a frontline worker. And Carmen could be someone at an airport, it could be someone at a hotel, it could be someone at a customer facing that you offer. And in Humanising IT, it's usually the user in the business. It's not the paying customer. It's the user that is offering the services to the customer. And so this is an example of a persona that we create. And in Humanising IT, we say we create about 4 personas for your company, for your users. And what you do, those personas should be hung up on your wall if you're back in the office. And every time you're designing an IT service management process or an IT service, you think of your personas. You think of your Carmens, you think of your Bobs, you think of another persona is somebody working in an office. Another persona might be someone that does not have much technical skills. They might be a new starter, or they might be a contractor. And every one of these personas will interact with technology very, very differently. And if I may go back again to the example of companies that use personas that we talked about at the beginning, an airline has a persona or has personas. Personas for an airline might be an elderly couple. It might be a frequent flyer businesswoman. It might be a family. It might be a passenger that has disabilities or impairments. Each of those personas will have a different experience of how they interact with the airline. And the airline knows that. And the airline has created experiences designed around these personas. And that's what Humanising IT does. We design IT processes and services based around personas of your business users that you've identified. And I cannot stress that enough. Personas are very, very important. Another technique is customer journey map. And that's a visual representation of the entire experience a customer has with a product, service, or brand. And I'll zoom in on this, but a customer journey map is a visual representation of what your user is doing. And we document it. So for example, and I said this earlier, when we write a process typically for incident management, we say when the user logs a ticket, we don't consider what the user is doing before the incident has occurred. Customer journey mapping looks at what they're doing before they interact. So as I said, your user might be in an environment where they actually can't log a ticket, or their technology is not working, so they can't log a ticket. So we look at the entire experience, and we also don't close the experience when it ends, like when the ticket's logged. We actually look at what happens after the ticket log. What is our persona or user doing? How do they feel? Do they go and tell their colleagues that experience was not very good, don't call IT? Or are they going, that was fantastic? And they go and share the knowledge. Did you know that IT told me this? So we look at what happened after the incident occurred also. And that's another technique that we integrate into Humanising IT. Prototyping, you might again have heard of this. It's a process of creating a preliminary simplified version of a product, system, or design to visualize and test. So quite often we jump in and we go and design and spend quite a lot of money designing things, whereas prototyping, we can just grab a piece of pen and a paper and some string and some scissors, and we just do it on a piece of paper. And the idea is that we'd actually go and ask a user, and the user would sit next to us and say, do you understand what that means on this that I've written down? And I might have written down, press the close button. And the user will say to me, where's the close button? It's too small to see. And again, I'm finding all these things out just by pen and paper and sticky tape and string. And it's a very powerful way just to test your products. And I quite often say, when you're writing a knowledge article, go and sit next to your user and actually watch them follow your knowledge article you've written. And when I asked IT professionals if they do that, they say no. And as I said, it's a very powerful way to create really, really cool ways of writing knowledge articles, is to watch how your users follow your instructions. And here we go. So problem statement, the users are not reading our knowledge articles. Most of the answers are there. It's wasting our time. And I hear that quite often, unfortunately, that, yeah, users are lazy. We write knowledge articles and no one's reading them. And again, it's probably because they don't understand it. And here's an example. Again, I won't mention the company, but this is a real example of mapping network drives, network shares. Already I'm confused. Map a network drive to get it from Explorer without having to look for it or type its network address. I'm English speaking, obviously, and that's very, very poorly written. And again, unfortunately, we are tasked in IT to do these type of activities, and we simply do not have the skills or education for it. And that is not a derogatory term. It is that what Humanising IT is here to teach you. And it's like saying human-centered designers don't understand human IT service management. They don't, because they haven't been trained in IT service management. And it's like we haven't been trained in design thinking. And so that's what we want to do, is train and educate IT professionals. So as I said, do you know your user's age, technical expertise, language background, etc.? Have you taken the time to observe a user logging a ticket? That's also something I'd highly recommend you do. Watch a user trying to log a ticket. As I said earlier, look at that UX. I don't even understand when I see portals a lot of the time. So instead of beginning our IT service design with operational goals, with SLAs, average response time, call times, etc., Diamond 2. And what that means is that when we start designing anything, I think that we tend to, we let a traditional way of working dictate how we design. So for example, call handling time or system availability is 99.9%. We've got that in our mind first, and we design that, our solutions have to meet these service level agreements. So we've jumped into Diamond 2 already. And so just to go through again, that the double diamond is a problem space, and then we go into solution. So humanizing IT starts with the human experience of our users. Diamond 1. We understand what our users' motivations, desires, and context. So where are they when interacting with IT? Why, when, where, and how do they need IT? And what are they doing before, during, and after contacting IT or interacting with our services? And it's especially, I think, very important today because technology is everywhere. Everyone will be using, technology. So don't jump into solution mode. Think about your users. Look at all those different users that are using technology. They are different. We have to create personas and design around those. Some of our users work from home. Some of them are working in critical situations. So begin with Diamond 1, throw away assumptions, and begin with experience. And I haven't said it enough, but of the experience of not just users, but also of you. Because I'm sure, like most of the people I know, are frustrated in IT. They're frustrated with the same problems, frustrated with not having a C into B, not having proactive problem management, lots, not mapping IT services. We're frustrated. So we've got to think about us as well. On that note, that's it. It was pretty good with time. So thank you. And I just wanted to say, yes, so we have our Humanising IT training and certification available online. We'd love to have you part of it. And my details are there on Hit Global, or you can contact me directly. So thank you.
Voy a esperar a que switchen la interpretación. Muchísimas gracias, de verdad. Un tema en lo personal muy apasionante y bueno, vamos a abrir en este momento el espacio para las preguntas y cualquier otro comentario también es bienvenido. Por favor, utilicen el espacio de preguntas y respuestas para las preguntas y los comentarios en el chat, ¿de acuerdo? En lo que empiezan a llegar las preguntas, y bueno, dado que a mí también me gusta mucho este tema, creo que es muy abrumador hablar de la creatividad y de la innovación en general, y más cuando estamos en el mundo de la tecnología. Entonces, Katrina, por favor, ayúdanos con cuáles serían tus 3 tips básicos para poder entrar en este mundo de la creatividad, en el mundo del design thinking, sin tener esta carga abrumadora de que no somos creativos.
Yes, and as we said at the beginning, everybody is creative, and I really relate to that, because I said that myself when I was studying design thinking. I'm like, I'm not creative, but we can all draw a stick man, so we are creative. And what is very interesting is that when we get IT people, and I'm going to use personas, our process owners don't like to be out of their comfort zone. But what design thinking is, it's a really safe environment, and it's a fun environment as well. And it is encouraging people that you all have great ideas. We're just not allowed to do that. And so, to answer your question, one of the primary techniques I would use is divergent thinking. And that's a technique where we encourage our users or IT professionals to think of as many crazy ideas as possible. So it's about quantity, not quality. Come up with crazy ideas. Use a drone to log an incident and all that stuff. And then we go into convergent thinking. So that's one way, is to hold a workshop and ask your teams to do the convergent and divergent thinking. It's fantastic. Another way, as I said, is to do just workshops and get people that usually don't have an opportunity to have a voice to do some journey mapping. And the other one is, as I said, is the empathetic. Be empathetic towards your users. Go out and talk to them and observe them, as I said, watching your knowledge, reading your knowledge articles or something like that. Yeah.
Maravilloso, maravilloso. Muchísimas gracias. Tenemos un par de preguntas por aquí. En tu experiencia, ¿cuáles son los retos más comunes a los que se enfrentan las organizaciones cuando rediseñan sus procesos para mejorar su customer experience?
They do it wrong. and yeah, because I think that they again they improve rather than transform, and that's the difference. Yes. So in design thinking, as I said, we actually throw away everything that we think is good, and we start from scratch. Because I challenge, and bear with me, why do we have to log an incident? I know, controversial, but we assume that's what we want to do. Let's throw away that assumption. What else can we do? How else can IT know about an issue? Let's do some divergent thinking. So that's an example. Don't improve, transform.
Muchísimas gracias. Recuerden que pueden hacer las preguntas en español, en inglés, no hay ningún problema, las vamos a considerar las dos. Tenemos el servicio de interpretación, así que adelante. Voy a leer la siguiente en inglés, dado que está escrita de esa manera y es para mantener la esencia de la pregunta. How to address end users' perspective to shareholders. Often, shareholders focus on the service and how this adds value to the company, but they hardly consider the end user needs, either it's internal or external. Is this something that may get tied to the user stories or more persona approach alike?
Yeah, that's a great question because I totally agree. And in Humanising IT, what we discuss is in IT, we very rarely get to speak to the customer. And that's a fact we have to be aware of. We only speak to the user. And so in Humanising IT, we map the customer journey, then we map the user journey. And so those two are intertwined. And that's not very often done because normally companies will map the customer journey and then they don't think about the user journey. And that's what Humanising IT does. So what we do is that when we do consulting as my company, we do both and we can actually show the value and the importance of what users do to enable the customer experience. And lastly, and that's why I'd love you to do the book or do the course, because we actually talk to this point. We then map the service management journey. It's 3 layers: customer, user, and service management journey. Because service management enables the customer journey. And we don't get credit for that, guys. Well, what do we do in IT? All we do is fix things. That's all we do. But in fact, we're enabling the customer's journey. And by doing the 3 layers, we can show the shareholders, the C-suites, the important people of what we're doing. And it really does change, and I've got examples, it really does change the perspective of senior management when you show them this. It's very powerful, yeah.
Katrina, vamos a cerrar con una perspectiva, tu perspectiva respecto a Humanizing IT, humanizar la parte de tecnología y la inteligencia artificial. ¿Consideras que la inteligencia artificial puede ser de ayuda en este proceso de humanizar la administración, la gestión de las tecnologías de la información?
Absolutely. And in fact, that's also a great question because I'll be also writing something on that very soon because we want to have a humanized experience and and that's what we'll be discussing. So there is absolutely very common ground there. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Maravilloso. Katrina, de parte del equipo de BP Gurus y por supuesto de todos nuestros asistentes, queremos agradecerte tu pasión, tu conocimiento y el tiempo que te has tomado para estar con nosotros y compartirnos todo esto. Muchísimas gracias.